That's a really good pot. All right. Welcome to Whiskey Mountains. I'm Adriana, and today we are doing Russells. So this is a standard fare Russells by Wild Turkey Distillery. If you're not familiar with that, this is the 90 proof, and it is age stated 10 years. This one's pretty standard, really not a ton to say about it. It's normally around 35, 38 bucks, and you're getting a 10-year product, so that's pretty good for that. I am not always as big of a fan of it, mainly because it's 90 proof and I find it to be a little bit bland, but I've got a newer bottle today, so I'm going to try it again and see if I maybe like it a little bit more. Mash bill on this is kind of your typical Wild Turkey mash bill. We're looking at 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% malted barley. I'm going to go ahead and get in the glass and try it out. But I'm probably not going to do a taste first and then air out and taste again. I don't think it really needs it. This is but it's a good starter bourbon. Let's get into it. I think Russells is pretty standard. Again, this is the Russells Reserve, the regular. This is not the single barrel. I've heard good things about the single barrel, but for the standard Russells Reserve, I find it a little bit boring. It's very just middle of the road bourbon. You got caramel and vanilla. And some oak. Probably because it's 10 years old. Like if you want somebody to know what bourbon smells like, give them this. I don't like it. Honestly, I think it's worse outside. It's like all the sweetness of it is gone. Normally it has at least a little bit more sweetness to it. But I don't know, it tastes a little more out of balance. And this is a new bottle. Normally I just don't get that much flavor, honestly, and I find it boring. You know, I mean, it just loses all interest very, very quickly, I think. What do we got here? Second sip was better. Okay. Second sip was better. I kind of get some nice pepper spice, and I'm holding myself up by kicking the tree because, you know, I'm sitting on a fallen log that's sideways and I just want to let go. Already distracted because it's just, I mean, actually, yeah, I'm going all over the place on this one. It's getting better, weirdly. Now I'm actually getting some nice flavor out of this. Well, shit. Literally the first sip I was like, bleh. And then the second sip improved, and now the third sip I'm like, oh, now I'm getting like some nice caramel, some nice baking spice. Again, it's still very standard bourbon. It's nothing special. I don't really get a lot of like that particular turkey funk on this, and I never generally do. I normally feel like it's pretty bland and out of balance, but actually no. Of course, when I go to film and say that it's bland and out of balance, I like it more. And maybe I'd been drinking, to be honest, and this is something to pay attention if you're newer to bourbon too. To be honest, like when your bottle gets low, it's not a great representation of what that bourbon tastes like. So Nick drinks Russells fairly often. I don't really drink it much. And so then a lot of the times when I do drink it, it's at the end of the bottle. So this is a brand new bottle. As you can see, it's still quite full. This has much more flavor. So maybe with those lower proof bourbon, and I've seen this with Old Forester 100 also. I think with those lower proof bourbons, once they get low, you just got to use them up. Like those very much shouldn't sit around low because they just become really bland and dull. Like all the flavor just goes flat. You know, like leaving a Coke. It takes longer for a bourbon to go flat, but you definitely see that with those low proofers. So maybe it's been unfair. Okay, back to what I'm actually getting out of it. Yeah, no, today I'm liking it more. I get like a little bit of like a cinnamony spice. Not, I was gonna say pepper, but more like a cinnamony spice. and a nice sweetness to it. It's not a particularly complex flavors, but it is actually kind of nice. So, and I'm getting, it's very thin and watery. That's the other thing about it that I'm not a fan of. I think it doesn't have a great mouthfeel, and it feels like you've added water to it. And I'm sure they did when they brought it down to 90 proof, but it feels like I just had, you know, dropped some water into this. So, but I thought this quote was hilarious. I like to always look up online about the bourbons, and I like to look up and, you know, like read reviews, watch other people's reviews, and see like which of those notes do I get, you know, what are things that I should be looking for. I'm still definitely, you know, learning a lot about it. Sorry that I'm making videos. But it, you know, it just helps me to like really hone in on which flavors I do and which flavors I don't. I don't tell you something that I read but I'm not getting. Like, you know, I just read them to help myself identify the notes that I am getting, if that makes sense. So, and I also, you know, will look at these reviews to get the information about it. So a lot of times Breaking Bourbon is a good website just for getting the basic information about it. They like to go a little nuts on their flavor descriptions, but this one cracks me up because, like I said, this is a very middle-of-the-road bourbon. Got some sweet, got some spice that you'd expect. Pretty even, not high complex flavors, kind of bland, kind of watery. But their description, particularly about the finish, which and I'm fine. Like, it's gone. You know, it's not a particular finish, but this is their description of the finish, and I think it's great. Rye spice reaches its crescendo in the finish, leading the charge as the flavors climax in full force. Buddy, climax in full force? Really? There's no climax in here. None. So, but if that's what you want to say, okay. So overall, it's not really one I feel the need to keep stocked, but my husband likes it more than I do. I'm liking it a little bit more today than I normally do. But I feel like it tends to be on the bland side in that you can get more interesting bourbons at the same price, you know, and around the same age, you know, but maybe even at a little higher proof. This is a very readily available one. So, but I'd be very interested to try the Russell single barrel. I feel like this is nice enough that in its, you know, better form, I guess, it might be a really enjoyable bourbon, and I could see why people are such fans. So, since Eagle Rare is kind of the like comparable, you know, 90 proof, around $35, 9 or 10 year bourbon, if I were going to choose between those, it would definitely be Eagle Rare, hands down. But I haven't taken Eagle Rare outside, so at first I did not like this outside, but it's actually improved, so yeah, it's okay. Having said that, I just hiked way too far for this fairly bland whiskey. I'll definitely have to do this hike again for a better whiskey. Maybe for Russell single barrel if I ever get my hands on that, because this was a really pretty hike. Thanks for joining me today on Whiskey Mountains. Salud. Record. I haven't heard a plane the whole fucking time. As soon as I press record, there's a plane. What are you doing? Squishity, squish, squish. What the fuck? Oh, I just made it worse. Somehow. Oh. It was staring at the branch. Ow! This hike is a mild disaster, but also kind of awesome. That's how you know it's a good hike. But, whatever. It's fucking Russell's. It's in the mountains in fucking Utah. And it's pretty. There you go. That's what you need to know, I think. Your lady is disappointed.